Hare Krishna, very dear devotees, welcome back once again to our ongoing series on the glories of our beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. Namo Om Vishnupadaya, Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale, Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane, Namaste Saraswati Deve, Gauravani Pacharine, Vishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So today I would like to begin with a new mini-series on the Samadhis of our previous Acaryas, and as well as other great saints in our line. My references will be, of course, Srila Prabhupada's books, along with the book entitled Suchaka Kirtan, which I found in the Vrindavan Research Institute, which includes various Vaishnava songs by different Acaryas, compiled in manuscript form by an unknown author 300 years ago. Also the Vaishnava Puja Vidhi by Govinda Das, written in the mid-17th century. The Varshik Utsav by Sri Krishnadas Shastri. He was a famous Gaudiya Vaishnava astrologer in the 18th century, as well as Mahanidhi Swami's book, the Gaudiya Vaishnava Samadhis in Vrindavan. So to begin, our prominent Gaudiya Vaishnava Acaryas and saints who have been placed in Samadhis in Vrindavan, such as the six Goswamis of Vrindavan, are all understood to be amongst the personalities who accompany the Lord whenever he comes to the material world to re-establish religious principles. Paritranaya sadhanam vinashaya taduskritam dharma samstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge, a famous verse in Bhagavad-Gita. In order to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I advent myself millennium after millennium. Bhagavad-Gita 4:8. So when the Lord comes, he brings his devotees with him. Srila Prabhupada used to say, you'll never see a picture of Krishna alone. He's always accompanied by his friends and devotees. So 500 years ago, these intimate servants, friends, parents, and lovers of Krishna came down from Goloka Vrindavan to assist the Lord in his incarnation as Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, our worshipable Lord. The most prominent amongst them were the six Goswamis of Vrindavan. Empowered by the Lord, you could say they established the very foundation of his movement. For example, Srila Sanatana Goswami explained Sambandha Tattva and the two paths of Sadhana Bhakti, Vaidya and Raganuga. Srila Rupa Goswami revealed the loving exchanges between Radha and Krishna and their spontaneous loving servants. Sri Jiva Goswami proved the preeminence of Gaudiya Vaishnavism by revealing without any doubt that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sri Raghunath Das Goswami taught the height of material renunciation by relishing the deepest spiritual attachment for Shri Shri, Radha and Krishna. There were other great devotees at that time as well, like Lokanath Goswami, Bhugarbha Goswami, and later many generations of great Acaryas came after Lord Chaitanya, like our beloved Srinivasacharya, Shyamananda Pandit, and Srila Narottam Das Thakur, our heroes. Then came, amongst others, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baladev Bijubhushana. Now in his famous work, Sri Chaitanya's Teachings, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains the role of Lord Chaitanya and his associates. He writes, and I quote, "The unprejudiced study of the life of Sri Krishna Chaitanya will help us in the fullest measure to understand the actual meaning of the gopis' love for Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. The esoteric reason for this is that Sri Krishna Chaitanya is Sri Krishna himself, And the associates of Sri Krishna Chaitanya are the same as the gopis, manjaris, and other servitors of Sri Krishna in Braj. Now, hearing this, one might naturally lament, all these great souls came and left. I am so unfortunate, I never got their association. And that was actually the mood of Narottam Das Thakur. He was, you could say, the original second generation of devotees after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, approximately 450 years ago. He wrote in his famous Prarthana, Kaha Mora Swarup Rupa, Kaha Sanatan, Kaha Das Raghunath Patit Pavan, Kaha Mora Pata Yuga, Kaha Kaviraj, Ekakale Kotagela Gora Nataraj, Se Sabha Sangara Sange Jai Kailo Bilas, Se Sangha Napai Kande Narottam Das. It's very touching. Where are my Swarup Damodar and Sri Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Das Raghunath, the deliverer of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Gauranga Mahaprabhu, the king of dancers, suddenly go? Being separated from their loving association and the blissful pastimes of Mahaprabhu, Narottam Das can only cry. However, if we continue to read Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's words in his Sri Chaitanya teachings, we come to a most comforting statement. He writes, quote, but they, meaning such great souls, can show themselves to us if they choose to do so. Wow. But they can show themselves to us if they choose to do so. And how do they do so? Well, that is the subject of this series. Because such liberated souls are beyond the limitations of time and space, so they can sometimes appear before a devotee to personally guide him or her on the path back home, back to Godhead. One time, a devotee asked Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, can the great devotees and saints of the past who have departed this world hear our prayers when we pray to them? So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur replied, yes, they can hear you, and they can also reciprocate with your prayers. I was so happy to read that. And actually, after a lecture in September 9th, 1969, I was reading, an Indian lady asked Srila Prabhupada, Swami, is the spiritual master still guiding us after death? And Srila Prabhupada replied, yes, yes. Just like Krishna is guiding us, similarly, the spiritual master will also guide us. Yes, yes. Just like Krishna is guiding us, similarly, the spiritual master will also guide us. And by visiting the Samadhis of great saints, we may also be inspired and feel guided in our progress in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, we should visit the Samadhis of great saints, especially in Braj, and pray to them, remember them, for there's actually a very intimate connection in remembering our great saints and attaining eternal residence in Vrindavan, just by remembering them. This is explained very clearly by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who writes in his illustrious Gita Vali, quote, you should all remember Srila Kavi Karnapura and all his family members, who are all sincere servants of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You should also remember the father of Kavi Karnapura, Shivananda Sen. Always remember all those Vaishnavas who strictly follow the path of Srila Rupa Goswami and who are absorbed in bhajan. If you actually want residence in the land of Braj, then you must remember all the Vaishnavas who are followers of Srila Rupa Goswami. So again, we can approach all these saints, as well as our beloved Srila Prabhupada, through their samadhis. Unlike common people in India who are burned and, you could say, forgotten at death, great devotees are lovingly placed in the sacred earth of Vrindavan. Srila Prabhupada said in a Srimad Bhagavatam class in Mayapur, March 4th, 1976, quote, "If you cultivate spiritual knowledge in large quantities, then your body is no longer material. It becomes spiritualized, chinmaya. Therefore the body of a great saintly person is not burned. It is buried in samadhi because a Vaishnava's body is chinmaya." Srila Prabhupada's words. Thus it's understood that samadhi mandirs act as, you could say, focal points for devotees to connect with the spiritual mercy, the blessings and inspiration continuously emanating from these self-realized souls in samadhi. By visiting the samadhis, offering obeisances, praying, circumambulating them, offering prasadam, incense, ghee lamps, and flowers, sincere devotees can receive mercy from these eternal associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So in this series, we'll talk about the departure of such saints from this world, like which day they departed, the time of their departure, the place where they're buried or placed in samadhi, as well as about their particular samadhis, the shape, the size, the architectural designs. We'll get into all the details. Most important, we'll discuss the mood of these great saints who reside in their samadhi mandirs, meaning exactly what is their samadhi, their meditation. Because the actual word samadhi means complete concentration of the mind on the Supreme Lord. Complete concentration of the mind on the Supreme Lord. In the Nirukti Vedic dictionary, it says, Samyak adiyate smin atma tattva yatat miyam. It means one is in samadhi when the mind is completely fixed in understanding the actual truth of the self. That is the consciousness interred in these samadhi mandirs, in the hearts of those great Vaishnavas. Lord Krishna tells Uddhava in Srimad Bhagavatam 11, 16, 24, Yoganam Atma Samrodho. Yoganam Atma Samrodho. Amongst the progressive states of yoga, I am the final state, samadhi, where the soul is completely free of illusion. Krishna's words. So, to begin with, the common term used for the departure of an acharya or a saint, many devotees are familiar with this word, tirobhav. Tirobhav, which in Sanskrit literally means disappearance day. However, there are many other names or terms in Vrindavan for the day a great devotee departs. One such name is Antardhana Lila. Antardhana Lila. Antardhana means literally the disguise of becoming invisible. The disguise of becoming invisible. In other words, the bodies of the saints become invisible because they're interred in the Samadhi Mandir, but it's just a disguise because in essence these great souls are always with us. I read that Antardhana is one of the 11 types of extraordinary form changing called Vikriya, which is a subclass of 8 riddhis, or extraordinary powers. These acharyas disappear, they become invisible, but they're still present with us. Another term used to describe the disappearance day of a great devotee in Braj is called Viraha Titi. Viraha Titi. Viraha means literally separation, and Titi refers to the time or the day of that saint's departure. Or you could say, in a general way, the day of separation. The day of separation. Another term used to describe the day, such a day, a saint leaves us, is Lal Gata. This is my favorite. Lal Gata, which literally means the red day. In Vrindavan culture, we discussed this before, red represents the meeting of one's beloved. Red represents the meeting of one's beloved. So when great saints depart, it's understood they are joining their beloved Radha and Krishna in their eternal pastimes. Therefore the departure day is referred to as Lal Gata. That's my favorite name. Another interesting name used in the Vaishnava community in Vrindavan when great devotees leave this world is Kunjvas. 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 Kunjvas refers to literally eternal residence in the groves of Braj. In other words, it refers to the day that a devotee attains eternal residence in the kunjas, or the groves of Vrindavan. That's our goal. Yet another name which refers to the disappearance of an acharya, or I read sometimes even the personal servant of an acharya, is Anand Visharanti Titi. Anand Visharanti Titi, which means, it's also very sweet, the day of resting in bliss. The day of resting in bliss. And one last name I found was used in the olden days in Vrindavan. It was Vijay Titi. Vijay Titi, meaning the day of victory. This was used when Rajput kings who had devoted their whole lives in devotion to Radha and Krishna left this world. For them it was called Vijay Titi. Actually, it's possible for a great devotee to depart on the day of his choice. It's possible for a great devotee to depart on the day of his choice. For example, recently on the day of Makara Sankranti in what was 2017, actually precisely it was the 14th of January 2017, the Mahant, the leader of the Nimbarka Sampradaya, his name was Sri Radha Sarveshwar Sharan Devacharya Maharaj. He was also known as Sriji Maharaj. He got up around 3 a.m., he performed his morning duties, then he asked his followers if it was Makara Sankranti. After confirming that it was, he took a seated position, entered into Samadhi, and left this world in front of all his followers. Is this Makara Sankranti? Yes, it is. He sat down in like yoga asana, entered into Samadhi, and left this world of his own choice. I believe he was 88 years old, and he had been the head of that sampradaya as an acharya for 74 years. He chose the moment of his disappearance. So this is the true meaning of, you could say, conquering death. Death does not decide when such devotees leave. Instead, such devotees disappear when they desire. All glories to such devotees. And we know where they go. Now, a very interesting fact is that a Tirobhav, or the departure day of a great devotee, it's often celebrated with more joy in Vrindavan and Bengal than the appearance day of that devotee. Why is that? Well, it's because when a pure devotee is born, his glories are yet unknown. But by the time he departs this world, his character and deeds are enshrined in history and can be celebrated in a great and wonderful way. The analogy is given of the lotus flower, whose beauty is hidden at night when it's closed up. But as the sun rises in the morning, it slowly begins to open and is fully blossomed by noontime. You can appreciate it towards the end. I was thinking just like our Srila Prabhupada. Though an astrologer made a remarkable predictions, or made many remarkable predictions when Prabhupada was born, his glories were unknown to the world at large. Just the family members knew, basically. Of course, there were a few further hints of Prabhupada's glories in his later years, even before he came to America. One time, a few of his sannyasi godbrothers, they complained to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati that Abai Baba, he was, some called him that, around that time that's how Prabhupada was referred to in the Gaudiya Math, Abai Baba. They complained that being a working householder, he wasn't deserving all the attention that Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati appeared to be giving him. We know that he was a favored son. So they were complaining, he's a working householder, but you're giving him so much association, not as much as us sannyasis. Now when Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati heard this complaint, he shot back, "Be quiet, all of you. In the end, he will do everything. Be quiet, all of you. In the end, he, our Prabhupada, will do everything." And he did. Our Srila Prabhupada became that chosen son who left India at the advanced age of 70 years old to spread the message of Lord Chaitanya all over the world. So as per tradition, we should celebrate his Tirobhava, his departure day, in a big way, because we know much of his glories. For though he too has departed, he's still with us. Prabhupada wrote of his own spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur had the following inscribed on the Samadhi Mandir of Haridas Thakur, as we know. He reasons ill who tells that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still and sound. The Vaishnavas died to live, and living tried to spread the holy name around. And Srila Prabhupada wrote to me in a letter, because he'd visited our temple in Detroit, and as he left, I wrote a letter as he was leaving, and I gave it to him as he was getting in the car, and I was saying that I would miss him very much. So Prabhupada actually wrote back 2 weeks later, quite a long letter, but part of that letter was to me, "I understand your feelings of separation. I am also feeling separation from my Guru Maharaj, but I always feel that he is watching over and protecting me." So I took that as an instruction, that although I feel separation from Prabhupada, I feel he's watching over and protecting me and all of us, actually. All of this international society for Krishna consciousness. He's so kind. Now in the past, and even in present-day Vrindavan, there are various ways a Vaishnava community celebrates the departure of such an Acharya or a saint. One way is to organize a large feast after they depart in remembrance of that great soul. And this was actually the final wish of Gaur Mohan De, Srila Prabhupada's father, on his deathbed. He made this request, that after he passed away, a big kirtan be held in honor of Lord Chaitanya, and a large feast be made for the assembled devotees. So we can do like that in our movement, for the departure of any Vaishnava. Now, it's really interesting. Every year in Vrindavan and Bengal, on the disappearance day of any of the 64 direct or intimate associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, those who were part of his pastimes 500 years ago, these associates are sometimes referred to as Mahantas. A very special ceremony is observed on the disappearance day of any one of those 64 throughout the year. A special ceremony is observed, which I'll explain to you in detail because it's really interesting. I saw it a few times in the past few years. But first, I will name these particular 64 Mahants or Acaryas, because just by hearing their names, we are purified, these associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The description begins with the Panchatattva standing on a six-sided jeweled simhasana in the center of the Yogapith, the appearance place of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Srinath Mayapur. 8 Mahantas or Acaryas surround them like the petals of a lotus flower. And these 8 Mahantas, who are described as equal to Sri Radha's Astasakis, are accompanied by 8 other great Acaryas. And they're described as follows. Swarup Damodar, who was with Chandrasekhar Acharya, Ratnagarbha Thakur, Shri Govinda, Shri Garuda Pandit, Shri Mukunda, Damodar Pandit, Krishnadas Thakur, and Krishnananda Thakur. Then Ramananda Roy, who was with Madhava Acharya, Dvija Subha Nanda, Ramachandra Datta, Vasudev Datta, Nanda Acharya, Shankara Thakur, Sudarshan Thakur, and Subhuti Rai. Then Govinda Nanda Thakur, who was with Sri Ram Pandit, Jagannath Das, Jagadish Pandit, Sadashiva Kaviraj, Sri Mukunda Rai, Sri Mukunda Nanda, Purandhara Acharya, and Narayan Vachaspati. Then Ramananda Vasu, who was with Paramananda Thakur, Bhalava Thakur, Jagadish Thakur, Vanamali Das, Shrikar Pandit, Srinath Mishra, Lakanacharya, and Purushottam Pandita. Then Shivananda Sen, who was with Shri Makara Dwaja Datta, Raghunath Datta, Shri Madhu Pandit, Vishnu Das Acharya, Purandara Mishra, Govinda Thakur, Paramananda Gupta, and Balaram Das. Then Govinda Ghosh, just to hear these names, right? Govinda Ghosh, who was with Kashi Mishra, Sikhi Mahiti, Shriman Pandita, Bharahari Das, Kavichandra Thakur, Hiranyagarbha Thakur, Jagannath Sain, and Dvija Pitambar. Then Madhava Ghosh, or sometimes it's said Vakashwara Pandit, who was with Shri Makara Dwaja Sena, Sri Vidya Vashaspati, Shri Govinda Thakur, Shri Kavikarnapur, Shri Kanta Thakur, Madhava Pandit, Prabodhananda Saraswati, and Balabhadra Bhattacharya. And then Vasudev Ghosh, who was with Raghava Pandit, Murari Chaitanya, Makar Dhwaj Pandit, Kansari Sen, Shri Jiva Pandit, Shri Mukunda Kaviraj, Chota Haridas, and Kavichandra. And then there are 8 Goswamis as part of these 64 Mahants. Shri Rupa, Shri Sanatan, Shri Lokanath, Shri Raghunath Das, Shri Raghunath Bhatta, Shri Jiva, Shri Gopal Bhatta, and Krishnadas Kaviraj. Then there's 8 Kavirajas. It's also said including Shri Janavadevi, Govinda Kaviraj, Karnapura Kaviraj, Nrsinga Kaviraj, Bhagavan Kaviraj, Balavikanta, Gopi Ramana, and Gokul Kaviraj. Then there's the Dwas Gopals, or 12 cowherd boys. Abhiram Gopal, Sundarananda, Dhananjaya, Goridas Pandit, Kamalakara Pipalai, Uda Rana Datta Thakur, Mahesh Pandit, Purushottam Das, Nagar Purushottam, Parameshwara Das, Kolavecha Sridhar, and Kala Krishna Das. Then 4 gatekeepers, Mukunda Das, Saranga Thakur, Govindacharya, and Vamsi Vadana Das. Now, the total number listed there is actually 104, although generally this list is called the 64 Mahantas. Wasn't that nice, hearing the names of those intimate associates of Lord Chaitanya? So, first of all, on any of their disappearance days, a huge feast is prepared for all of them. In other words, if it's the appearance day of one of them, then a huge feast is prepared for all of them. It's known as Chalshath Mahant Bhog, in which devotees place 64 asanas, 64 chadars, 64 plates of prasadam, and 64 coins as dakshin in horizontal and vertical lines on the ground. Then the devotees invoke these 64 acharyas to sit down at these designated places and pray to them to take the prasad, to honor the disappearance day of whomever that particular acharya is being honored that day. After that, an artik is performed to all the acharyas, and afterwards their prasadam is distributed to all the assembled Vaishnavas. This is followed by another celebration where devotees dance to the beat of 12 mridangas and lots of wampers and kartals while chanting the names of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And another ritual then takes place with the singing of alapchari, in which a Vaishnava melodiously sings the names of all 64 acharyas, saying Jai Ho, after the name of each acharya. Finally, all the Vaishnavas go on Nagar Sankirtan, Harinam Sankirtan, village to village, and at one point they stop and sing a kirtan known as Suchaka Kirtan. This particular kirtan we'll discuss in detail in a further lecture in this series. It's really interesting. And finally in the evening, there's katha, discussions on the lives and departures of these 64 associates of Lord Chaitanya, and in particular that particular acharya whose disappearance day they're observing that day. And I was reading on such days in Vrindavan and in Mayapur, the deities wear mostly red and white outfits that day. And previously, when this ceremony was observed, because it's observed 64 times during the year, Vaishnava men would shave their heads on the disappearance day of any of these acharyas. So in these ways, the departure of these great souls is celebrated, 64 Mahants. So I would like to finish today with the poetry of two well-known Brajabasi poets. The first is a poet named Rasik Das, whom I discovered in my research in the Vrindavan Research Institute. He wrote something very beautiful about these great acharyas whom we mentioned. He wrote, "All glories to Lord Nanda Nandana, the son of Maharaj Nanda. All glories to his messengers who come to deliver the sinful and uplift the practitioners. By witnessing the sidelong glance of the Lord, they understand the meaning of that glance as an order to take responsibility of giving the highest meaning of life, prem, to others. Leaving all comforts, opulence, and pleasure in association with the divine couple, they appear themselves in front of us. Therefore, Rasik Das addresses all his listeners. My friends, take shelter of the moon-like feet of these acharyas. If you do so, you are most fortunate." Wow. Another poet, Vinod Vihari Das, whom I discovered also in the Vrindavan Research Institute, he writes, "May my mind always roam in the divine knowledge of the acharyas, which originated from the tejas, or golden glow of Mahaprabhu. May my heart always dive deep in the beautiful form of them who are so dear to the Lord himself. May my senses always serve them and purify the karma of my previous lives and those of this life as well. With my heart, speech, and actions, may I always desire to sing their glories and become a particle of dust at their lotus feet." Vinod Bihari weeps in separation of these acharyas and says to them, "Please, all of you acharyas, just say once, 'O Vinod, you are ours.'" Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone. We'll be back with part 2 in this new series next Friday. From here, the Baltic Sea coast in Poland, where we are drowning not in water, but in the ocean of devotion to Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we bid you farewell until next Friday. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Srimati Radharani ki, Mayapur Dham ki, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan Yagya ki, back home, back to Godhead ki. Take all the fallen conditioned souls with us ki. Gaura Premanandi, Jai Jai Sisi Radhe Shyam. All glorious to Sridhar Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.